The people are running away from the bombing. People are dying. We just send this to the nation to see what is happening in Nuba Mountains. يا نحن الآن في الشارع ونحن جارين وقاعدين نصلي يا رب اتدخل يا رب.
Sudan is in the grip of a brutal civil war. 11 million people have been driven from their homes, and tens of thousands have been killed. As a paramilitary group called the Rapid Support Forces battles the Sudanese army for control of the country. The UN has accused both sides of abuses. But a 6-month investigation by the New York Times shows that the RSF is committing systemic atrocities across Sudan, including ethnic cleansing. Often under the watch of its commanders. The opaque structure of the RSF makes it hard to identify the leaders responsible. But by analysing dozens of slick propaganda videos, where the commanders are presented as benevolent actors, we mapped out, for the first time, a command structure of at least 20 key figures and the regions they operate in. RSF fighters under these commanders often film atrocities themselves, evidence that may one day hold perpetrators to account. So the Times teamed up with researchers at CIR's Sudan Witness Project to collect these videos as the RSF moved across Sudan. We analysed fire signals and images collected by satellites too. We interviewed an RSF commander on the front line. And we spoke to witnesses to the war by partnering with IN Media, a network of reporters working anonymously in Sudan.
طبعا يا هو شفنا كثير والله في سبب الحرب والقتل والاغتصاب والحاجات دي كلها يعني شفناها نحن.
Taken together, the evidence traces a playbook of terror being waged by the RSF in multiple states and locates commanders like these at or very near the sites of crimes.
اغتصبوه قتلوه سرقوه شالوا حق الناس وما عارف يا أخي سلام عليك ده حقنا أخو شنا كويس معك ده حقنا شنا.
Sudan has been here before. Almost 2 decades ago, a notorious militia called the Janjaweed, meaning devils on horseback, carried out a genocide in Darfur. Over 300,000 people were estimated to have been killed. A former Janjaweed commander, Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, or Hemeti, now leads the Rapid Support Forces, along with his brother Abdel Rahim as his deputy. And their fighters are using the tactics of Darfur from 20 years ago in today's civil war. We documented 3 broad patterns of abuse: executing unarmed captives, deliberately torching communities, and directly abusing civilians, including with sexual violence.
واغتصب ما اغتصب انت مش اغتصب لك اخت ولا اغتصب لك بنت كما تدين سودان.
RSF fighters can be identified by their uniform. They wear light camouflage, often with a Sudanese flag on one sleeve and a distinctive logo on the other. They sometimes recruit mercenaries and fight alongside loose-knit militias who are usually in plain clothes. And many have scarves, known as kadmuls, wrapped around their heads. We often hear them use a language of ethnic cleansing. Sudan's army is also accused of war crimes, including deliberately starving civilians, shelling hospitals, and indiscriminate airstrikes. As many as 200 people were reportedly killed in airstrikes earlier this month in Darfur. But in this investigation, we documented abuses by the RSF on a much wider scale that may amount to crimes against humanity. One of the commanders we found at the site of several atrocities is Hussein Barsham. He usually directs fighting in the Kordofan region, and that's where we find him in October 2023, when the RSF seized Balila Airport and a major oil field nearby. Barsham celebrates by the front of the terminal, but video filmed on the other side shows what their victory looks like. Fighters executing a group of captives. A warning, these videos are very graphic. So we've blurred some scenes. As the person filming enters this parking lot, a gunman is firing into a pile of bodies on the ground. RSF fighters circle the victims and applaud the killing. 14 bodies in total. Many of them are wearing the dark fatigues typical of the Sudanese army, who were defending the airport. They are now unarmed, and to execute them would be a war crime. In addition to our analysis, a doctor with expertise in conflict-related injuries told us there are signs that that's exactly what happened here. The blood is fresh. Several of the bodies are twitching, indicating they were recently killed. The blood splatter matches the gunshot wounds, and some of the body positions suggest they were killed here, not moved after the fight. Barsham is nearby, showing off the jacket of a Sudanese soldier. A satellite image taken on October 30th shows the execution site, confirming the men were killed on that day. Barsham was just 100 yards away. He's at the scene, commanding his forces, around the time of the executions. Under the laws of war, he may bear responsibility if he ordered this crime or did nothing to prevent it. 8 months later, we found Barsham with 3 more RSF commanders, Salah al-Fouti, Al-Taj al-Tijani, and a field commander with the nom de guerre, John Garang, when their fighters carried out another execution. This time, it was in Al Fula, the capital of West Kordofan. On June 20th, we see a large convoy of RSF fighters rolling into the town. They spread out between streets of homes, brag about men they had killed, and threaten others taken captive. Hundreds of Sudanese soldiers defending Al Fula had fled south earlier that day, and the RSF easily overruns the city. Barsham is there among them. Al-Tijani too, standing alongside Barsham. And nearby, fighters swarm around Salah al-Fouti as he walks. During the attack, the RSF rounds up 20 men and takes them just outside the town. An unidentified fighter says that he recognizes one of the men as an army officer. A few of the men are wearing military fatigues, but none of them are armed. Then, just as they did at Balila Airport, the RSF opened fire. The field commander, who goes by John Garang, is with them. In the fray, they laud their senior commanders, Al-Tijani and Al-Fouti. Al-Tijani, Al-Foti, and Barshem are not in the videos of these executions, but by analysing footage of them that day, we know they were less than a mile away. And we know they're in Al-Fula around the same time as the executions because the shadows in both sets of videos match. These commanders know each other. They're repeatedly filmed together in West Kordofan. And in the 8 months between the executions at Balila and Al-Fula, they appear to have done nothing to stop their fighters' behaviour. One of the war's most notorious episodes was the execution of the then governor of West Darfur, Khamis Abakar. In June 2023, he was captured by the RSF hours after he publicly criticised the group. Video shows him being forced inside a building by a commander, Abdulrahman Joma Barakallah. This was the last time he was seen alive. Video, filmed hours later, showed his bloodied body. Governor Abakar's killing happened during a campaign of ethnic violence targeting his tribe, the Masalit community in Al Janina, the same group the Janjaweed terrorized decades ago.
تم طرد مساليت الليلة بنجاح من داخل على الثورة. الله أكبر. لا يفرقكم والله لهذا الكلب.
3 مرات جو حاجمين هيئة التضامن والثورة بعد قتلة الوالي ب15 يوم ان احنا جينا.
Mariam Mohammed Ismail is among 500,000 Sudanese who fled the violence to Chad.
بعد جاي هنا ذات يعني الإنسان لمن الحمد لله جينا، لكن خلينا ياهو الميتين ديل وحدين ما قدرنا نرفعهم ذات. فقدنا ناس أسر كثيرة، فقدناهم والله، فقدنا أولادنا، فقدنا بناتنا، حتى أطفال صغار.
دار مساليت.
الله أكبر.
ما في دار مساليت ثاني، دار عرب بس.
The RSF laid waste to Al Janina, burning down or destroying close to 1/4 of the city's 300,000 buildings, just as the Janjaweed did decades ago. And they've used fire as a method of war across the rest of Darfur and beyond for almost 2 years. In Kutum, in North Darfur, entire communities have been destroyed since October. Satellite images show no natural fire path between burned homes, and multiple villages are separately burned. These are telltale signs of arson. Hundreds of miles away in Al Tukma, we catch RSF fighters in the act. They're jubilant as homes and shops burn. They destroyed half the town. At a military base the RSF seized in Sidra, a commander oversees the burning. A fighter walks into view, holding a torch and burning down huts. The one he just passed is now ablaze, and the group gloats as they burn. A field commander named Al-Guja is nearby, bragging as even more huts go up in flames. Al-Guja is not the only commander implicated in scorched earth tactics. We found 4 RSF commanders directing attacks during a deadly months-long assault in North Darfur. Al-Nur al-Guba and Jado Hamdan Abu Shuk, both high-ranking commanders, and Ali Rizkala and Zir Salam, both lower-ranking field commanders. For weeks, they oversaw a brutal campaign to capture the state's capital, Al-Fashir, from Sudan's army and forces allied with them. The RSF encircled the city in April. Dozens of outlying villages were torched in attacks targeting the Zagawa ethnic group. The siege forced a heavily pregnant Eklis Adam Ali Al-Haj to flee her home village of Tawila.
يوميا تسمع قتلوا فلان الليلة مثلا اغتصابات يعني حاجات كل حاجات عنيفة ما في حاجة سمحة.
She reached the village near Golo Dam.
مشيت جولو نمت اليوم الأول وأنا كنت نفسي لي 10 أيام فقط. اليوم ال11 الجنجويد ده الناس قدام السرير جو في جولة هناك.
It's here, in Golo Dam, that we find the first of the North Darfur commanders, Ali Rizkallah, telling passers-by not to leave, that they're safe.
هاي مواطنين ارجعوا بيوتكم، احنا ثورة ما تخافوا. هاي احنا في حمايتكم وفي حماية ارواحكم وممتلكاتكم.
The reservoir in Golo Dam was the main water source for the area, serving more than 200,000 people. Rizkallah ordered it to be turned off.
أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر يا أخي جوا والله أقصي أبشر يا معلم أبشر.
قاموا في الخزان هناك برضو قاموا بالسحب ويشيلوا لنا، شالوا لنا الناس تلفوناتهم، ساقوا بهايم الناس، ساقوا عربات الناس وشنو، وهم ذاتوا بيجلدونا بالسيطان ما تمشوا شنو، خيطوا عذاب الحمد لله.
Eklas escaped again, this time to a school in Al Fasher. But the RSF pushed into the city. This is where we see another 3 commanders on the front line. Zir Salem, the lower-ranking commander, and Al Guba and Abu Shuk, the senior commanders. An RSF field commander in Al Fasher confirmed to us that the senior commanders are in charge.
نعم يعني مشرفين على العمليات العسكرية بكامل التنفيذ للتوجيهات من القيادة العليا.
We're going to focus here on 48 hours on June 1st and 2nd, when we see these commanders together as a whole neighborhood is torched. Zir Salem is regularly filmed fighting on the streets with his forces. On June 1st, he appears in another video, not fighting this time, but giving the call to prayer inside a mosque. We located the mosque to eastern Al Fasher. The next day, Zir Salem is out in the street, just 2 blocks from the mosque. That same day, he's with his superior officers, Al Guba and Abu Shuk, 1,000 feet from the mosque, as they rally their troops. All around this area, clusters of buildings were burned down as the RSF took control. And on June 1st, even more buildings are torched. The RSF commander denied responsibility and blamed Sudanese army bombing. There are some signs of bombardment, but most of the destruction that we analysed is consistent with the RSF's scorched earth tactics. A mile away from the mosque, a neighbourhood the size of 10 city blocks in Manhattan is ablaze that morning. Multiple fires appear to have been ignited around the same time, where members of the Zagawa ethnic group were believed to be living. This is evidence of a targeted ground-based attack, researchers from the Humanitarian Research Lab at Yale University say. By August, more than 20,000 structures were damaged or destroyed, many by fire. The devastation is heavily concentrated in the eastern part of the city, the area of RSF advance. Arafa Ali Agoub was living in this area, and she recalled the RSF terrorizing them before they fled. Her husband was abducted. Arafa was displaced from her home by the Janjaweed when she was a child, and now by the RSF. The senior commanders on the ground in Al Fasher, Al Guba and Abu Shuk, were both in the Janjaweed and have led RSF forces in North Darfur for years. Abu Shuk is a relative of the RSF leader Hemeti, and he has a history of ethnic violence with Zagawa rivals, who his forces targeted again in Al Fasher. The presence of these high-ranking commanders in Al Fasher shows the significance of this campaign to the RSF, and it unwittingly links them to these atrocities. Eklas, Arafa, and many thousands more were forced to flee, this time back to Eklas's home in Tuwila.
رجعنا نزوح تاني من الفاشر لطويلة، لكن النزوح التاني دي نزوح صعب ومبالغة ذاته، سلاح في راسنا وأسئلة زي الأسئلة، وفي ناس ذاته ما لقوا من قطرة الدانات ما لقوا أي شيء يويه، ناس جو مقطوفة العيدي، لا زراعة لا تجارة لا أي شيء، الناس ديل هم واقفين ما عندهم أي شيء.
When Eklas reached her home, Even that had been looted.
سحبوا كل الأشياء ما فضل لنا خير شنو خير التراب اللي لقيناه من أول ما قدروا يشيلوه ما فضل لنا ولا شيء.
The terror that Eklis and Arafah endured in Al Fasher is being inflicted on ordinary civilians throughout Sudan. Countless videos show the RSF whipping people, beating them, sometimes shooting them, and forcing them to make animal noises. In October, the RSF repeatedly attacked civilians in Jazeera State. After Abu Agla Kekel, an RSF commander from that area, defected to Sudan's army. This triggered a wave of retaliation by the RSF across Kekel's home state. Villages in Jazeera were also attacked when Kekel was in the RSF. But this time, they specifically targeted the tribe he was from. Hundreds were killed in a matter of weeks. One of the towns invaded by the RSF is Al Sareha. An RSF commander leading that campaign is Al Guja, who we saw when huts were torched earlier. Here he is, 300 yards from Al Sareha, shooting at it and directing RSF fighters around him. Once inside, they round up men and hold them. We don't see what happens next. But the RSF reportedly kills more than 100 people here. Simultaneous attacks were happening in villages right across the eastern Jazeera region.
الصورة مباشرة نازل جاينا تاني قالوا فزح تاني عشان يغنموا ويخشوا على العروض.
In many places, the RSF round up the men of the area or force them to run away at gunpoint. Witnesses we spoke to were terrified.
جن قريب 70 أو 80 عربية من تات شرموات العجلات جو خاشين وقفوا جنب الباب اطلعوا سريع. أنا من الناس اللي جلدت جلد مبالغة ولا دي شالوا جدعوا مني.
They stole Amar Alawad Alam's herd of goats.
لكن أثناء ما اتلفت كده لقيت الجماعة طوالي بالسلاح يا زول ثابت. واحد من الجماعة سألني قال لي يا زول البهايم وين؟ قلت له البهايم هذه في الحيطة. فتحوا الحيطة البرميل زحوا البرميل مرقوا الغنم ومرقوا بيها فاتوا. من داخل السريحة.
The RSF emptied Al Sareha and many other villages. And the fighters gloated about their ethnic cleansing.
طردوا السريحة سريع فارتقوهم سريع وأقعب من حق تنبول أقعب بل حق تنبول. تنبول مدك رباعي مدك أقول لكم 100 سنة نظافة 100 سنة والله الناس متعنا ما في لكنا ما في أبو ده والله أبو ده ما في.
The attacks triggered another exodus. 150,000 people left in 2 weeks. They're among over 8 million people now displaced in Sudan. and millions more who have fled to neighbouring countries. Evidence we collected of the RSF's rampage in Jazeera match multiple accounts of another type of abuse: sexual violence. Survivors have given testimony to experts we interviewed, including Hala Al-Karib, head of SIHA, a women's advocacy group.
The scale of it is really big. The RSF has been targeting women from Darfur, women from Nuba Mountains with torture, with rape.
Her team also received testimonials of rape in several towns in Jazeera, particularly around the area that Keiko was from.
And they are subject to rape because in their minds, those should be the relatives of Keiko. In Tambul and Rufaa City and Azraq and El Junaid villages.
Tambul, Rufa and Azraq are among the villages RSF fighters bragged that they had destroyed. Experts we spoke to said that separating men from their families, as we see in Jazeera, is a key indicator of sexual violence.
They were going door to door and separating men from women, taking away all the stalling, and then initiating significant atrocities.
Witnesses rarely talked directly about sexual violence, but they feared for the women and girls in their communities.
يا هم ما بخلوا لهم تلفونات ولا قروش ولا بخلوهم هم ذاته بسوقهم طوالي واحنا ذاته تعبانين يعني نقولوا نطلعوا كده يا هم يخلوا البنات كمان احنا وبناتنا.
Hanana Bakar al-Tahir recalled RSF fighters leering at her in her home in Jazeera.
بنكون قاعدين بنتونس احنا نسوان بجلباباتنا طبعا زول في بيته حر قاعدين كده بنعاين نلقى زول الدعامي فوق في الحيطه يا ساتر ده شنو ده.
They also killed a man for defending women.
عملوا احتفال في بيته ولا شنو ما عارفه المهم جا داخلين له وقالوا لي يشيلوا البنات وابا بالبنات هنا قاموا قتلوه.
As Al-Nazir fled his home, the RSF beat him when he objected to women in his group being harassed.
واحدين يكور في النسوان واحدين يسوي شنو فالواحد ما قدر يستحمل جاء ضربني بالدبسك في بورا هنا.
And later he was shot. Human Rights Watch, the UN and other groups have documented sexual violence in at least 5 states in Sudan since the conflict broke out.
The number of cases are really much bigger than anybody can imagine.
Decades on from the genocide in Darfur, just one person has been put on trial at the International Criminal Court. This time, there may be a stronger prospect for accountability. The videos that fighters perceive as trophies of their exploits are regarded by the prosecutor of the ICC as something else: evidence.
So we can piece together the different types of evidence sets that are available now from phones, from video and audio recordings that are also proving to be extremely critical to pierce the veil of impunity.
In this investigation, the footage allowed us to find 10 commanders overseeing potential crimes and identify the areas of operation of many more. Their leader, General Dagalo or Hemeti, may bear ultimate responsibility. Over and over, fighters pay fealty to him.
محمد حمدان دقلو الرجل الصادق محمد حمدان دقلو الرجل مع السلام الأمير المهمشين محمد حمدان دقلو موسى.
And the field commander we spoke to said that they take orders from the top.
الأوامر بتجي من هيئة العمليات والقيادة العليا لقوات الدعم السريع.
In almost 2 years of war, Hemeti has failed to stop them from carrying out abuses.
زي ما عهدنا قلنا قاتلكم جيل بعد جيل الغاية بتاعنا.
But there are glimmers of hope. The survivors we spoke to recalled the kindness of strangers, fellow citizens who offered food, shelter, or protection as they fled. What they need now is for the violence to end.
والله دايرين الحرب يقيف وحياتنا يرجع زي ما كان ودايرين شفاعنا دي يتألموا نرجع لأماكننا زي ما كانت نقول لا للحرب نعم للسلام.